If you're a magician, I know you've received the question, can you make my wife disappear? With any luck, you've anticipated this and already have a witty comeback. But I found that the second most common feedback when you announce that you're a magician is people saying something about protecting your wallet. People assume if you're good at magic, you're also good at stealing things from them. Because to most people, magicians are masters of psychological manipulation. After all, stealing takes misdirection. And the whole cliche, the hands are quicker than the eye, plays right into this. People expect us to be master spies, living lives of bravado and danger. The name's Kowalk. Jeff Kowalk. And this is understandable because if you perform at all, you're already braver than the average person, putting yourself out there, doing something that requires you to keep a secret from the very people who are observing your actions. But in reality, if you're like most magicians, it takes a lot of guts to pull off actual pickpocketing. So if you want to add that second level of cool to your act, I think you should consider mixing some pickpocketing or pseudo pickpocketing into your act. Enter the subject of today's review and our intrepid guide, the FISM winner Hector Mancha. Hector has teamed up with all of the delightful folks over at Vanishing Inc. I want you to know I work for Vanishing Inc. You can see that story in this video. And although I do work for the company, I have committed to you that I will give you my honest opinion, good, bad, or indifferent, even if it jeopardizes my family's well-being. Okay, let's not go that far, but I will be very honest with you. If you haven't already seen the press releases, this book, The Wondrous World of Pickpocketing, is a 113-page hardback book all about the subject of theatrical pickpocketing. As soon as I say the phrase theatrical pickpocketing, it should be obvious that all of this comes with a huge disclaimer. You should only be taking things from people for entertainment purposes and with prior consent. I think with any magic routine, but even more so in a pickpocketing routine, the success of your presentation is highly dependent on who you select to be your participant on stage. So Hector rightly spends the first part of the book telling you the type of person you should be selecting and how you can enlist their participation. It goes without saying you should always get consent before touching anyone, their pockets, their clothing, their body, much less removing anything from them. And Hector tells you that. But he also indicates that he doesn't take no for an answer when he's selecting someone to help him on stage. To be absolutely clear, no has to be a valid option to have any kind of consent. I think that's clear within the book, but there still are some moments where I was left wondering, what does he really practice versus what is he teaching? Along the way, Hector taught me and will teach you how to steal things like watches, belts, ties, anything in their pockets, including wallets or cell phones. Glasses. Yes, glasses. I'll note here that the book has two distinct sections. The first is actual pickpocketing technique, and the second is more pseudo pickpocketing and magical presentations. Kind of reminds me of another classic magic text that I know of. Because it's a book, it's different to learn from than a lot of the previous video releases that have been done, so there's no doubt you would like to know how good is the instruction. From my perspective, this is not an in-depth treatise. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. It is totally sufficient to learn all of the techniques and misdirections that you would need to successfully pull off these feats. But Hector does not write pages upon pages of details. And if anything, what that taught me is that pickpocketing is one of those skills that is best learned by practicing, by actually going out and doing it. Speaking of which, Hector has a number of really cool tips on how to practice this stuff, including a really neat idea for learning the watch steal if you don't have a significant other or friend who will loan you their arm and wrist for a significant amount of time. He also covers the steps that you'll probably want to take as you graduate to actually doing this for audiences. And he gives suggestions to build up your confidence before you try this out on stage. I personally got most of the value out of this from the magic section of the book, because I could see myself taking one of these routines and injecting some of that into my performances. This section is a lot softer than the real pickpocketing stuff. For example, you might give them your wallet to try to steal back. There are routines with playing cards, spirit slates, and even a trick using an invisible deck in a very clever way. While I have seen Hector perform, I've never actually seen him do his pickpocketing stuff, so I don't really know how much of this material he really uses. Clearly he has done this, and there are a few routines that he tells you explicitly he has never actually performed. Most of the magic routines could be performed as is without needing any real pickpocketing skills, but almost all of them have a couple of moments within them where you could attempt some of your newfound theatrical pickpocketing skills in addition to the magic routine that will have a satisfying ending. Which kind of brings me around to who is this book for? If you're looking at doing the real pickpocketing stuff, you have to be very comfortable invading your participants' personal space, which frankly I think is much easier for Europeans than it would be for Americans. Americans have a much larger cone of no. Basically, just be cautious. I will point out that in addition to being the kind of person that needs the guts to perform real pickpocketing, you also need kind of a stage or parlor setting, I think. I'm sure that a few of the magic effects could be adopted to a close-up setting, but it's really going to play much, much better for a bigger audience because a lot of this is done for the audience. The participant on stage will definitely be a part of it, but they're not exactly experiencing magic. They are the prop that you're interacting with here for the benefit of everyone else. Personally, I'm not very comfortable being very handsy with my participants. I'm probably not comfortable reaching into another guy's pocket, undoing their belt. Yes, that is a part of this if you're going to do a belt steal. Or even performing the pseudo pickpocketing routine where you attempt to steal the participant's underwear. Don't worry, no real underwear is removed. This is more like the 20th century briefs or similar routines. In addition to the different routines, the actual pickpocketing, he gives you some brief scripts on what you should say as you're going through the real pickpocketing, and then each of the magic tricks has its own script written up in there, and at the end of the book he gives you some additional unfinished ideas for things how you could incorporate keys and rings and other items. They're not complete thoughts. Each one is a paragraph or two describing how you could get more mileage and milk this just a little bit more. So the things that I liked about this book, I really liked that mix of the real hardcore stuff and then the magic stuff so that you have something to do at the beginner level when you buy this book, and then something to which you could aspire if you really want to go after the pickpocketing stuff. If you just want to add one or two items to your show that feel like pickpocketing, you can, and you'll get credit for being a real thief. On the other hand, if you have an iron stomach and you really want to risk it for the biscuit, you can get all handsy whenever you feel like you're ready for that kind of technique. For me personally, one of the highlights was a routine towards the end of the book called The Elegant Robbery of Sean Connery. I don't think that this routine idea is unique to Hector. There was a similar write-up in The New Phoenix back in 1954, but this is his presentation of a routine with a bill and you stealing it out of the participant's pocket and leaving a note, a thank you note, if you will, for allowing you to take this item. So it's cool, easy to do. You don't have to have any real pickpocketing skills to do it, but you will need a few other items to perform everything in the book. Products that are probably in many magicians' drawers, but there are some magicians' wallets that will benefit you in the magic section, as well as some other stuff, decks of cards, invisible decks, potentially spirit slates, etc., as previously mentioned. The book is, of course, beautiful with good fonts, spacing, and layouts. And there is a bibliography in the back so that if you want to do more reading on this, you know where you can find some other sources. The book is more affordable than many of the larger books that have come out in recent history and retails for $40. Of course, if you'd like to save on that, Don's Magic and Books is the sponsor of this video, and he'd like for you to take 10% off almost everything on his website if you use the code SPOOKY at checkout this week. There's no point in letting anyone pick your pocket, so save with Don this week. And by the way, if you buy $20 or more of media items and you live in the United States, you'll get free shipping. There are a couple of things that I didn't particularly care for in this book, and I might get fired for telling you this. Just kidding. One of the things is that I feel that you need to read the entire book together, which is not hard because it's not a super long book and it's a pretty easy read. But what I mean by that is there are parts that I think are a little bit unclear. For example, there's a belt steal, and in the beginning of the book, he's telling you that the belt has to start unbuckled. and that he has a logical reason for getting there. You're left thinking, how do I get a participant's belt unbuckled in a logical way? Well, there's an explanation later in the scripting section of how Hector goes about this and gets into it, but until you got to that section, it was very unclear how in the world you would do this. So you can't just pick up the book and read one section. You could, but if there's any pieces that are missing, you're probably going to have to read further to figure out what the whole story is there. In addition, his writing style and sense of humor takes a little bit of getting used to. I've seen him perform, and so I know the style of banter that he has with his audience and all these little quips and one-liners and jokes that he throws in there. And he's attempted to do the same thing in the written word, but in my opinion, it just doesn't translate as well without all of the other nonverbal cues that you get when you're seeing a performer in real life. It really just kind of annoyed me as I was reading through it. It won't destroy your reading, but it may be a little distracting and less fun. If your performance style is one that embraces intrigue and mystery, then you very well may add some of these spy-type techniques to your show to give your audience a unique experience that they seem to universally love. As always, my friends, thank you for watching. Hold on to those wallets, and until next time, keep reading.